Welcome to the Truth Wins podcast. This is episode 72. It's titled Faith Doesn't Have to Be Blind. My name is Todd Sherman. I'm your host as always, and with me is my good friend Stu. Say hey, Stu.
Hey, Stu.
We also have a special guest, but before we get to that, I wanted to do Stu's favorite part of our podcast now called Time to Stump Stu. All right, so I didn't let you look because it wouldn't really be trying to stump you if you had the answer or the questions in advance. So this question Stu doesn't know anything about. I'm throwing it to him now the first time he heard about it. So this is, I think, from our episode on Does God Cut Deals with Satan, whatever the title of that one was. And so Dory asked this. She says, it's strange to me if God created Satan, then he had to know what he was capable of. I don't know any parents who wouldn't forgive their child if the child actually changed his behavior.
Yes, here's the problem with this. Once again, when we try to anthropomorphize God or make him like us, we try to do things that say, well, Satan had to behave this way because I think he would behave this way. The whole idea that God gave us choices and free will is a really important aspect, or otherwise we wouldn't have anything called love, because love always involves a choice, not to be able to love someone or to be able to love them. So when she says that she would be happy with a change in her child, what if the change is for the worse? You don't want your child to walk out in front of a truck. So you would want to make sure any change in your child's behavior is towards the good. There should be an element or a goal towards which you're leading your child. The Greek word is teleos, a final goal, that you want your child to become like this. You'd hope that they become good instead of evil. So when God created Satan, we wouldn't know what it's like to be God, to do that, and to have the power to create someone. So we don't really have a conception of what that's like in terms of how Satan and God's relationship was. We know it was good at one time, and then Satan says, I will be like the Most High. Mm-hmm. Satan decides, pride. Yeah. I'm going to be better than God.
And she's assuming that maybe Satan would have had guilt about that and come back to God and ask for forgiveness. But that's a complete assumption, right?
Right. And that's not how it turned out.
Yeah. Okay. So is it Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 that talk about Satan and his being basically the closest to God of any created being, right. Any angel?
Yeah, he's incredibly beautiful, apparently. He was an archangel.
Yeah. All right. Well, something to think about. Thank you, Dory, for throwing that out there. It's not an easy answer, but Stu gave it a swing. So swing and a hit. All right. So that's today's edition of Time to Stump Stu. Well, as I said earlier, we have a guest today, and his name is Doug Anson. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Did I pronounce that correct? Anson?
Yes.
It's Hanson without the H?
You know, I would say that probably 80% of the times I check in at a hotel and they ask me my name and I say Anson and then I spell it and then they come back and say, sorry, we don't have any record of you having a reservation. And I say, are you looking under Hanson? Isn't that what you said? No, I said Anson. Thanks for getting it right.
Yes. Well, my Sherman is usually a shortened version, but my great-granddad must have been stubborn and say, I'm keeping all those vowels and stuff. So I'm right there with you. Constantly get mispronounced, misspelled, but we power through it. That's what makes us tough. But Doug is with us today. He's a graduate of West Point and was an Army general who became interested in apologetics. So we're going to talk a lot about apologetics in these next couple episodes. Basically, the short answer is apologetics is defending the faith. Giving people understanding reasons to believe the faith, but also being able to defend that and giving other people those reasons too. And so you became passionate about that years back. In fact, you pursued an advanced degree in that?
Yes, I did.
Where was that?
At the Talbot School of Theology in Biola University in Southern California.
Yeah, we looked at that school for my middle daughter. We looked at that. She didn't end up going there, but it's a beautiful campus.
It is, yeah.
Cool.
Yep, it was mostly an online program with summer residents.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Go to Southern California beaches in the summer. And so how many years was that? Was that a 2-year, 4-year?
What was it supposed to be, and how long did it take me?
Well,
is that what the real question is?
Not the same.
Yes.
Necessarily.
Yes.
No, it's designed to be full-time 2 years. But at this point in my life, I decided that I was not going to be in a hurry. And so I stretched it out 4 or 5 years, something like that, which was fine with me because at the same time I was teaching apologetics and drawing immediately upon what I was learning.
Perfect.
So I'm glad I took it slow. Besides which, it was a little easier payment-wise, too.
Yeah.
The first degree, I'll tell you about this shortly, but first degree I actually had to pay for.
Yes.
Army's paid for almost everything else I've been taught.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I was on the 8-year plan for my seminary degree, so I know. But I planted a church. I had a little family, I had a small children in the family, and so it was 1 or 2 classes at a time. But yeah, it helped it sink. So I'm right there with you. Is that hey, you do it at your own pace, and as long as you get her done, that's the main thing.
No, in previous degrees, it was always, particularly at West Point, 18 to 21 credit hours, and realistically, you couldn't devote that much time to any one subject.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, I said, I'm studying apologetics because I want to study it and I want to get the most out of it. So I'm going to go slower and actually read all the books that are recommended.
No kidding, yeah.
The recommended readings, which no one reads.
Who would read, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't do just the Cliff Notes.
There you go.
So you got Stu out of prison after a long stint there. Is that how you guys met? Is that correct?
I think I was actually just going into prison when we met. So.
So
no,
he's a
that's not
chaplain?
true. People don't believe that.
I'm
Todd's
teasing.
making that up.
I am. How'd you guys met at church?
Yes.
A while back?
We
Yep.
did.
Cool.
We did.
And hit it off and have a kindred spirit, loving apologetics. Tell us a little bit about what made you passionate about apologetics. Why are you here now talking with us about defending the faith?
Well, the short story is I did meet Stu last year, and Stu sat through one of my courses and thought, yeah, he's not too bad, and he must have convinced you to invite me, so that puts me here now.
Yeah.
And that's a short story, but Stu and I are about the same age, and you're a youngster, Todd. That's clear.
Well, I appreciate that. Most people I'm not, but I appreciate that.
I say that because at this stage of my life, you look back. You've got this longer perspective to look back on your life and see how things have played out and how God has worked in your life. And he's acted in a lot of different ways, which I can share with you if you like, some of them, but has brought me to this point. And been various phases in my life. And if we go back, you said I went to West Point. Well, I graduated West Point with no intent to make the Army a career. My goal was to be a good Army officer, and I went out and went to airborne school and ranger school and chose to be infantry and went to Korea and had all these neat assignments. But my intent was I didn't want to leave the service until they paid for my graduate school and go back to West Point and teach. So I was able to do that. But from a big picture perspective, and I think some of this, is relevant to what we're going to talk about here for the next 30 minutes or so. But I can look back over my life, and there were 3 distinct phases, and I'm in the 4th phase right now. And I say phases because they were tied to world events and to what was going on in the world. So, for example, when I graduated, we were back in the Cold War. You remember that, Stu?
I do. That's where my parents met.
Yeah, you got to read about that in the history books now. But the Russians were the big enemies, and that's what we trained for. In fact, I had an assignment in the Mojave Desert for 3.5 years. I wore a Russian uniform for 3.5 years, and we were the opposing force to all the American units that would rotate through, and we would fight them. I hate to say this, but we kicked their butt every single time. But they learned from it. And, the first Gulf War in the 90s, we were very successful, and a large part of it was due at that time at what was called the National Training Center. Wow. But anyway, so for about 12 years or so, I was back and forth, different assignments, did go to graduate school. The Army, believe it or not, sent me to Stanford. They paid for that.
Really?
Right? So a couple of master's degrees from there, technical, and then taught at West Point. But then the Berlin Wall collapsed, and the Soviet Union broke up, and everything changed. And what the U.S. government did and the military did was they said, we don't need so many soldiers, so they drew down. And so I left active duty and joined the reserves and went to work at Los Alamos National Lab, okay, which is just down the road, 6 or 7 hours in northern New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And while I was doing that, my reserve duty was to teach part of summer school at West Point, to teach math there. Fast forward, another 10 years or so. These were about 10 or 12-year blocks. So now my focus had shifted from full-time military to part-time military and full-time civilian work. Then 9/11 hit, and my life and my family's life changed drastically. I recall in November of 2001, I was standing on the sidelines of my son's soccer game, and a bunch of parents said, "Hey, Doug, you're in the reserves, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "They're going to call you up?" And at the time, I said to them, look, I'm a 44-year-old guy who's in the reserves, haven't been with soldiers in who knows how long. It'll take World War III for them to call. I sincerely believe that. It would take World War III for them to call me up. 3 days later, I had orders that said, report to Fort Benning in 3 days. That's the notice that I had. And for the next 12 years, I was back and forth on active duty or back at Los Alamos. It was kind of a rotating door.